Greetings Samoa, and welcome back to Star Trek Prodigy Season 2, Episodes 16 to 20, where today we are going to be wrapping up Prodigy. It's been fun, but I'm also looking forward to getting back into TOS with just an hour as opposed to like 2.5 or whatever these take. It has been fun. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't have done this if I wasn't enjoying it. And I think it's also proven that I can do 4-part classic Doctor Who stories later once we wrap up modern Doctor Who in like 3 years. Yeah, you can't see it, but I still did the thing where I check the watch that I'm not wearing to check how long it was going to be till we finish modern Doctor Who, which should be coming back next week. As I mentioned, my brother's been moving, so he's been really sporadically available. We were hoping we could do it today, but it turns out we couldn't. But yeah, it should be good for next week. Yes, Prodigy. Where did we leave off? We're at Ascension, Part 2. We just learned Wesley had been captured by Essentia, and now we're basically in the final stretch. You know, we're at the battles and stuff over Solum? Yeah. Solum, that's the name of the planet. I always confuse Solum with, what's his face? The Birdman from Hell of a Boss. And given that Prodigy is a kid's show and Hell of a Boss is definitely not a kid's show, I always want to make sure I say the right one. Solus, that's his name. But yeah, if for some reason you don't know what we're doing, we're basically going to be recording an audio commentary track live. For legal reasons, I can't just stream a Star Trek episode. So it's bring your own video. There's a link to Netflix in the description. Everyone celebrate last day of paying for Netflix. In a little bit, we are going to do a countdown. We're going to do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And then on go, we're all going to hit play, and we're going to be synced up, maybe with some breaks in between the episodes, but usually I don't do too many. Animation World channel, hello! Do you remember? It's me, Anakit. Yes, that name does sound familiar. I believe it's been a while since I've seen you, but it is good to have someone in the chat. The watch-alongs usually don't get too many people in the chat, and I don't think we really get constant people. But, it's always good when someone does show up, and it's good that we get people consistently for the reviews. I don't think I have much to share today. I feel like there was some sort of Star Trek news, but it might have been Doctor Who news that I wanted to talk about. But God, I can't think of anything. We did all the shows last week. We did all the ads last week. No, but I also, the thing is, I also can't think of the Doctor Who news. But I swear. Let me check. I usually send myself links on Discord. I was like, I know I'm going to forget this thing. That's a French fry recipe. That's my car's number. Yeah, no, I don't know. There was something, but I've forgotten what it was. So yeah, I think we will start with Ascension Part 2. As I mentioned, we're going to do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And on go, everyone is going to hit play. We're not going to skip intros. We're going to do all those intros like the dumb Star Trek logo they got. I say it's not the dumbest thing. It's just when you binge them, it can get a little annoying. And I mostly don't like it because on my digital backups, it means every single episode has the exact same thumbnail image because Windows will just take something from like X frames into the movie and it's always the same frame. Although interestingly, sometimes it's not, even though you would think it'd be the same frame, but it's still one from, that little loopy thing where they change the ship. We'll point it out. All right, I'm about to do the countdown. There's my timer. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. That thing, this logo right here. Oh, yes, no, I do remember now. Lower Decks. I don't think I had announced this. I didn't watch the trailer, so I didn't realize. It's actually been announced. October 24th is the release date of Season 5. So starting the 26th, the Saturday after. The 24th is a Thursday, and then on the Saturdays afterwards, I'll be reviewing Lower Decks, and that will take us through the end of the year. That'll take us till December 28th. But we will just get into Season 2 of TOS, so we'll finish Season 1, and then we'll do 2 episodes of Season 2, and that's what Star Trek looks like. Meanwhile, Doctor Who will also, we'll finish Season 2 just before Lower Decks. Sorry I didn't show up in the last 3 streams for Prodigy Season 2, but yeah, I watched all Season 2 episode in 5 days. Yeah, I tried to do the reviews, but it really wasn't working because so much of it was like, well, we'll see how this goes. And it was kind of annoying because I have 10 minutes, 15 minutes set up before each stream, just because YouTube only lets you do 15-minute intervals. So I'm just gonna watch it all for my own enjoyment, and then we can do watch-alongs, and that's been good, I think. But yeah, we're into the good stuff, we're into the good episodes of Prodigy. The language one was kind of bad. Was it episode 3 or 4? I can check. Episode 5, I think it is. That's the bad one. Whatever where they have the whale talk to Murph. But no, all the others are good. It's just the first 5, I don't know, it wasn't really my cup of tea. Now I have to remember where exactly we left off. I thought... I'm alright. I thought I could sneak a bite of these pumpkin muffins we made before the stream, and I took too long to chew, and then I started choking on one. Good start. Okay, I'm remembering where we are. I do love, one thing I think this season is doing better than probably any other Star Trek, old or new, is I'm really getting a sense of the scale of these ships. Just constantly, in so many of the episodes, we're getting when the crew are walking on top of the protostar. And you just get the sense of how huge these things are, and that someone built them. These are a physical thing. And that close-up we got when I started talking of the little fighters shooting Voyager and flying over. I'm really enjoying this. First 5 episodes were a slower start for Season 2, but next 15 were bangers. The first 5 were kind of weak. It felt like they had a story that they were stepping away from, or you had some struggles of how do you get the kids in the middle of the action. The second set of 5 episodes, they felt weirdly episodic. Again, we were ignoring the plot, even though you realize every single one contributed to the plot. But the moment Wesley shows up, it's a 10 out of 10, the whole way through. And even then, most of my complaints about the first, 7 episodes are mostly preference stuff. It's just things I don't particularly like. Even that explosion, I don't know, there's something about it. that feels a lot more weighty. It's like the ships have a proper mass and weight, and I really love it. The little bomb thing looks vaguely familiar to me, and I kind of remember that the first time. Is it the torpedo that gets stuck in the Defiant in that one episode? Where, like, Quark and some other capitalist guy... You know the one? Starship Down, I think that's what it's called. No, it's just the slow turn in the ship and the banking in the creeks. It's really well done throughout this whole season. They renamed /dubbed Wesley Crusher as Doctor Who. No, that was that was TNG. I've been making that joke for years. Yeah, I've never seen the Marvel stuff. Well, not the Doctor Strange stuff, really, like the newer ones. But no, Wesley's whole thing is great. These sort of weapons always bother me, right? When there's like some sort of time bubble or whatever that ages you up, right? The commander's about to get like his hand stuck in it or something, right? And this happens a lot. There's the great one where like in TNG where the Enterprise and a Romulan ship are like stuck in time and Picard's hands ages really quick. I'm like, right there. What exactly happens inside his body at the boundary? Because, like, his heart's pumping, and it's trying to get blood into his hand. But that time is accelerated, so you think it'd, like, pool up in the wrist and it'd blow up his hand or something. It really bothers me. And then, like, going in, is it not going to have enough blood? Like, how does your circulatory system work when you're halfway through one of those time bubbles? I forgot there was a holographic J-Wave for a second. I was like, what? I've always found this interesting. We have the running thing about the fleet being stretched too thin, which kind of makes sense. I mean, it's like the Romulan evacuation is all hands on deck. But weren't they building a new fleet specifically to, like, evacuate the Romulans? I mean, maybe they were. It always felt weird to me that they would build a new fleet and not use any of their existing ships, but... It is a really good setup towards the end, where you get the Martian attack, though, that you don't really realize is a setup. So I do like it. The last flight of the Protostar is the best story in this season, hands down. I don't know if you saw the VOD from last week, but I noticed... in the Protostar, like, the shuttle bay is covered in blood. Like, it's a lot of blood, to the point where I was I didn't really notice it the first time or think about the implications, but I was surprised they could put that much blood in a kid's show. If you didn't see it, go and like look a clip after this, because it's a lot of blood. This is another weak point of the series to me. Is they're about to do that, like, cool training thing they were practicing in the holodeck, right? And I don't understand, like, basically, I don't understand why they're useful here. Like, they do this whole big crazy thing. It's like, man, we couldn't have done this maneuver that, like, no one's ever done, or no cadet's ever done, unless Dal was here. And they do these crazy flips and tricks, but it's like, what? Why did you need to do those? Like, they just need to fly at the big enemy ship. I mean, I'll point it up. Maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but... I would probably agree with the fan consensus, though, that this is the best season of New Trek. And in terms of, like, raw seasons, it's definitely up there. I mean, I'm a fan of Enterprise Season 3. Real big fan of that one. And a lot of late Deep Space Nine. But this is up there with those. I mean, my 3D printer can barely handle a jostle. I can't imagine doing that thing. Del piloting the Nova Squadron vessel is just great. I'll have to pay more attention this time. I just remember the plot of that element not making a lot of sense. And plus, I just really don't like those fighters. Like, they're fine. I just feel like I've seen them in every animated sci-fi for kids. Like, I swear the enemies in Voltron use that exact same thing. Again, not how logic works, but go ahead. One day, I need to write my mega video on how, like, Vulcans just... As I said before, I think you can tell how well a writer understands Vulcan by how much they make their Vulcan characters say the word logic. Another thing I was a little confused on, this scene here, like, they're like, Zero really needs his new body, right? And I kind of get the impression that if Zero's body isn't ready in time, he will die. But, like, I'm a little confused why he doesn't just become his old self. Like, he couldn't fix the weapon. He couldn't solve the problem if his body disappeared. And, like, no one could go in the shuttle bay? But is it really that, like, time sensitive? Okay, here's the bit. Here's the bit I didn't get. Yeah. Why do they have to perform the Boothby supernova? Oh shoot, I've lost the time bar. How long has that been gone? So they need to draw the weapon, right? And the weapon's gonna chase the shuttle, because it's a Starfleet vessel, I guess. But, like, why do they need to do this super impossible Boothby supernova that no one has ever successfully performed? Hey, comment. You know, if his voice of Michelle Diaz. Yes, she did voice Amethyst in Steven Universe. I haven't seen Owl House, but Steven Universe is a show that I have one of two shows I would consider perfect, and it took me until the Tribble episode to realize that was Amethyst. I literally had to pause the episode in the middle of the climax, go upstairs, and, like, tell Alex about it. And they're like, yeah, how did I not realize? For 12 episodes, it's not even a different voice. It just doesn't have emotion behind it in most lines. Okay, here. So it's targeting Maj'el. So all she has to do is fly at the ship, right? In a straight line. That's all she has to do. And, instead, they're just gonna do a bunch of weird twists. Like, why do the other two have to be there? It's targeting Maj'el. And it's like some big triumphant moment, but I'm like, why are you two here? Why are you doing this crazy impossible thing? Just pull up at the last minute. Like, what's the point of this? If they need to open their coolant interlocks, why not just do that and go straight? I guess they had to detach, but, like, you don't have to do that spin. I don't understand why that maneuver is so difficult, and I don't understand why they had to do it in the first place. Like, pull away! Don't go up, just pull away, go backwards. This is such a great season, and, like, the last 10 episodes are very tightly written, and that right there is the worst bit out of the 10. Well, no, actually. The whole Solem Civil War thing is a little weird. It's not a plot hole, but we'll get to that in like an hour. Wackadoo is a term used by Bluey. I have also not seen Bluey. But I also don't have, like, a child, so... I think my wife watches it, though. I do think there is a weird element to the Zero plot line. That every non-corporeal we meet seems to just believe being corporeal is objectively better. And, like, yeah, the ability to have extra senses does seem good. But, like, every non-corporeal literally stays on that planet forever, and it almost sends a message of, like, trying to be normal, or, like, trying to conform to the rest of the world rather than being who you were born or who you are. Like, there's no way that being non-corporeal is a benefit as presented in this story. It's just worse. And I feel like that's a little... There's some undertones there that are kind of not great. We get 4 versions of Zero throughout the series. Yes, we do. Huh. Good lord, that's a big shuttle bay. Where even is that shuttle bay? Does Voyager have a wall that tall? I can't wait to get the models of these ships. Okay, this bit also bothers me a little bit. So, no ship came to their aid. Right. So, Essentia takes that to believe that they are now totally... No ship is ever going to come for the rest of the finale. But, like, what if the ship is now 2 minutes away, you know? Like, what if the ships were, however long that battle took, just, like, 2 minutes further away? I mean, she's right, of course, but it's not almost sound logic. What do we got here? Not Blink, Brink. Which one's Brink? Alright, they land on the planet. I don't really remember which episode is which too much, if I'm being honest. But I think well, I'll review it a little bit, but then we'll go straight into Brink. Yeah, oops, I clicked the wrong episode. Ascension is, yeah, pretty good. Some nitpicks. I mean, the fighter sequence is not the fighter sequence, the, Boothby Supernova sequence is the weakest part of, like, the entire second half. But it was some good action. I remember the first, the tension's not really there as strongly when you know everything that's going to happen. But the first time, I remember there was a lot of tension, and we talked over a bunch in a watch-along. This is why I don't do them the first time. But the character work is always great in Prodigy. There were a bunch of little moments, like, the cut to the doctor evacuating the civilians and families in the middle of the war zone. And it's kind of similar, like in Generations, when the Enterprise D is, going down. When they cut to, like, all the children and stuff, they're just, like, in the red alert trying to be taken somewhere safe. And you have, like, the Boolean woman holding the baby, and it's like, yeah, there are real people, like, on these ships. These ships have, like, hundreds of lives each. And Zero's, I don't know what you'd call it, his aging scene, like his whole bit in the shuttle bay, is really kind of visceral and, like, probably just about, like, they did a lot with what they could get away with in a kid's show. And I think just it's a lot of very effective stuff on display. Even if the Boothby Supernova doesn't really make sense on any level. But yeah, I think we will go into Brink. I actually do need to fill up my water bottle, so I'm going to run a quick ad, and I always forget that I need to leave the engine hum open. There we go. And I will literally be back in just a few seconds, probably. Seconds. The video I get this engine hum from, which honestly I should probably just get like an MP3 for or something, from Ender for Life, TNG Engineering Night Shift Ambience. In fact, I'll link it. That's actually monetized. In fact, there, you can see my whole playlist of engine hums. That's actually monetized, so every time I walk away from the computer, there's a chance that just goes to ads. And that's happened before. I've had ads in the middle of engine hums. Everyone's ads probably done? Anyone that got an ad, I'm assuming, is now done. Let me get the transparent screen back. I've just realized OBS isn't capturing my mouse either, so it really doesn't matter where I put my mouse to keep the time bar up. You won't see it. In fact, let me mute that. All right, Brink, we will start another countdown. Getting back to Solum, as I said, I was really hoping we'd get more Solum politics. We didn't, which is a shame, but, you know, they gave us a lot of good material otherwise. So yeah, I will do the countdown. Again, it's going to be a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, and on go, we all hit play. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And again, no skipping intros. We're not barbarians here. I make those jokes, but my wife will hit skip intro buttons, so, you know. They still haven't got to Enterprise yet, though, so I don't know how they'll take the Faith of the Heart theme song. But, you know, all my claims that people who don't like that song don't deserve love might come back to bite me. It's a good theme song. It's a great theme song. Trust me, in these watch-alongs, you're going to hear all my, shall we call them unique, opinions. Especially Doctor Who. Like, the Doctor Who fanbase and I disagree on a lot of things. Particularly in the classics. But, yeah. I'll have to look, actually. Is there, like, a classic Doctor Who episode that the fandom considers great that I, like, think is good? Probably. But, yeah, I mean, Genesis of the Daleks isn't bad. It's just, it's overrated. It really is. I wonder, this intro, maybe it's just because you're, like, binging it on Netflix, there's no cold open. This intro feels like one of the longest, but it's only 2 minutes, because it's about to end. Yeah, it's like 2 minutes, and I swear most of the intros are like 2 minutes 16 or something, like 30 even. I know Deep Space Nine isn't the longest, even though a lot of people think it is, but I don't remember what actually is the longest. It might be Discovery. Is he wearing the thing? You know, in Star Wars and Cloud City, that guy on the left. There's like a bald guy wearing a weird android thing like that. Is that a reference? I have no idea what that guy's name is. I'm not a Star Wars nerd, but you know who I'm talking about? He's the guy on Cloud City. Oh God, I actually remember, I had to spend a lot of time making sure I didn't skip an episode or something, because this flashback really threw me off. That is, like, the most extreme they ever make Wesley's powers. And I do like it. I think they do a good job of having someone whose, like, thoughts are reality not feel like they can just solve the whole problem, you know, on their own. Like, see, the Protostar is not a big ship. In fact, I want to know if the Protostar or the Defiant is bigger. The Protostar is bigger than the Defiant by, like, let's see, 17 meters. I think you are. Tell that to Saru. I think this episode was called Enemy Lines in French, which I think is probably a better title. There's the old Janeway never violated the Prime Directive, I know. I feel like if this was an arc in Voyager, where, like, Janeway finds a bunch of kids and then, like, sends them on missions, everyone would hate the episode. Is that just me? I mean, if it was, like, you know, exactly Prodigy and it was this well written, you know, it'd be fine. But conceptually, it really feels like an episode people would hate and, like, complain about Janeway about. That is a nice uniform. In fact, that might be my favorite. I'll take 2. I mean, again, did you have to resign? Like, it's a token gesture, but still. Is that legal? There's the subtext to the Treaty of Algernon right there. I mean, if caught, Starfleet will probably give Janeway to the Valnacott. It's like, look, she's a loose cannon. This is the 5th time in 2 days she's gone rogue. There is a nice subtle path to, like, Del becoming the #1, though, which, when you know it's coming, you can pick up on a few more. Like, I think no Del previously would have just been like, yeah, this is your mission. You do whatever. Let alone, like, demonstrating the bond he and Gwen have. I've just realized there's not really any romance for Del and Gwen in this season, because they ended season 1 with the kiss, and I think there were hints of it at the start of the season, you know, when Del was calling Gwen. But I just realized there's, like, none of that in this season. I mean, it's probably just you know, there wasn't any time for much. But it's interesting that they didn't seem to put anything there. I think it's less that Valnakot have secretive names, that, like, Ithram, the Diviner, doesn't want you to know his name is Ithram. It's just, it was potentially some rank, or literally just his role, you know, on Tars Lamora, where he took the title of the Diviner, almost like Emperor or something. You know, like, it's not a perfect example, but, people, at least in official capacity, probably wouldn't say Joe Biden. They'd say Mr. President. It might be something like that. You know, I would actually be really interested to go watch season 1, and see if Dreadnought there actually knows, like, the kids from the events of this season. Well done, Jankum. And if he goes, if there are any hints, because I feel like the Diviner had some comments like that behind the mystery with Chakotay, but we'll see. But, like, she does, right? The way this time loop works, she does. It's not the worst thing, but I feel like we do kind of brush it under the rug. Ithram becomes the divine, unless I'm missing something. Ithram becomes the diviner. Essentia becomes, you know, her future self. And that, like, Essentia, the older version, remembers overthrowing her older self at the end of this. The diviner in season 1 remembers that Gwen disagrees with what he's doing, that she went off to join the Federation. The diviner's fine, I can understand that. God, I love Maj'el's outfit. I don't know why. Yeah, I get that, like, Del and Gwen aren't really in a position where they're like, okay, let's go on a date now. But it is interesting that, like, you know, there are still some moments between missions. There's even a time where everyone thinks that they're done and they're going home, and that, like, Temporal Investigations is having the mission. So, like, I'm not saying you would have a major plot for necessarily about the romance. I'm just, it's interesting to note that, you know, like I said at the beginning, I feel like there were like hints of that when Del was calling Gwen. It's very reminiscent of, like, a long distance college relationship or something. And there's just none of that elsewhere. I would be interested to find, like, a quote or to ask the producers one day, but it probably is just, you know, there's so much going on in the story, they didn't want to take away from that. Must have been the wind. I do find it kind of funny how two Dark Souls bosses seem to run solo. It is a good, like, I do like the outfits, but the more I look at it, I'm like, yeah, that seems like something from Elden Ring or whatever. In episode 3, Del ironically said to Maj'el that Gwen is not his girlfriend. Well, I mean, like, I'm also a little confused. Even in season 1, it was a little weird. Because, like, there's the moment where Del misunderstood something and kissed Gwen, and she was like, what the hell? Like, it didn't seem like there's anything there. But then at the end of the season, they shared a kiss. I'd have to go back to there. I mean, I don't think they're, like, officially a couple. Like, maybe they did just decide, yeah, you know what, let's drop that. I didn't like that idea. But, you know, they were expecting a season 3, clearly, so maybe that was a focus there. You know, the guard suits are actually done pretty well. Like with the intricacies, that the same thing you get with the heirlooms in the Dark Souls bosses that run the planet. With the gold leaf and that kind of curly detail. I bet we're gonna get some amazing cosplays out of Prodigy. Netflix resumes it for season 3 because we don't want the series to end in 2 seasons. I am down for more Prodigy, although I would be surprised. I take it as basically given that season 2 is the final one. Like, I don't know exactly the rights between the Star Trek franchise and Star Trek Prodigy is a thing. But like, even if Netflix could do a season 3, could they use like Janeway or the Doctor or any stuff like that? Because, I mean, that's stuff owned by Paramount and CBS. Like, you would get a lot of these weird scenarios whenever CBS and Paramount are different companies. By like who owns movie stuff, who owns TV stuff, who owns what. And I feel like Netflix would run into those problems. Especially as I think there'd be an expectation to have these legacy characters and maybe even planets and stuff. And plus, I mean, you don't have to have Robert Picardo, but he's off doing Academy now. Or even something like that. Could Netflix say the word Nausicaan? Because Nausicaans are what? TNG? So not Netflix doesn't own Nausicaans. But it is like, you know, one of the #1 streaming shows, so who knows? Even the writers, like the heads, seem to be... The responses they're giving are like, yeah, no, there's nothing on the cards right now, but like in theory it could happen and we're open. But they don't want to say that, because then it's even less likely to happen. Did he just slap his cheeks? That's fun. I don't notice that. What I wouldn't necessarily be surprised at if, like, years down the line, if there's some follow-up series about the Prodigy characters. But who knows? I mean, years down the line, who even knows what television will look like? Nickelodeon Paramount are stupid for canceling this jam. Yes! We saw Nickelodeon has a history of canceling shows with no good reason. I mean, Paramount, who doesn't, honestly? It's like Lower Decks and Prodigy are both like top level streams, like most in demand shows. Aside from just being fan favorites, like, yeah, it's. And the fact that they canceled the animated comedy Netflix and announced that they're considering a live action comedy, I'm like, was this literally just animation bias? Was this literally just going, you know, and no one watches animation. Animation's for kids. It's not good. But I mean, let's be honest. Has Paramount ever really known what to do with Star Trek or CBS? Cancel season 3, even though it was canceled TOS, even though it was doing much better than like previous than sort of the common belief now. Like they did TNG pretty good. They handled like everything through Voyager fairly good. But like Enterprise. Do I need to say more than just Enterprise and then like basically anything? Well, we're getting Section 31 now, which even if you were to do a Section 31 movie, like really doesn't seem like what you should do for a Section 31 movie. I mean, even that's a good moment of like just how close this crew is getting and how Dell is becoming the number one. Is like you make the right call was enough for him to realize what to do. Animation is having a biasness over a future. I think animation has always had a bias against it. Like, I don't know, unless we're talking like Flintstones and Scooby-Doo days, but also a lot of those were kid shows, weren't they? Like, surely animation is kind of seen as a kid's medium because that's what it originally was. I mean, I guess back in the days of like Betty Boop, it was for like adults, you know, it's kind of what would play before, or even just like you'd specifically go to see animated works at like the earliest days of television. I mean, hopefully we buck this trend. Like, well, I don't think animation, at least for like studios, is just seen as for kids. I mean, you have like, you know, Rick and Morty. You have a lot of companies that are trying to make the next big like adult animated comedy. you'll have like Family Guy and Simpsons. There's still kind of probably an element of like it's for kids, but I do hope we can kind of buck this trend, because you do have a lot of fantastic animated pieces coming out. And I mean, you have things like Has Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss, which are doing exceptionally well, are both very much for adults, but they are also from YouTube, which is dealing with its own, like biases against it. It's just, I don't know, it's a baffling, the medium is somehow like lesser. Because like that's ultimately what it is, that animation is somehow lesser than the live action. But there are definitely people who think it's for kids. I mean, the Has Been Hotel that I've referenced, if you don't know, it's an adult animated show, like set in hell, very adult. One of the I was gonna, live streaming Prodigy, I don't really know if I could actually describe Has Been Hotel so much. But there are a lot of cases that come up where it's like, someone's kid is like, hey, can I watch this show? The parent goes, they see that it's like animated on Amazon's little picture, whatever, and they're like, yeah. And then they get to, episode 3, and they go, oh no, what are you watching? And then, like, the kid gets in trouble for some reason, even though, the parent should get in trouble. But, yeah, it's a shame. Like, on one hand, I think it is telling that, like, Discovery got canceled, but, the two, like, canceled shows that really had, like, high praise, were the animated ones, not Strange New Worlds. But at the same time, it is kind of hard to tell if Paramount's making good choices or not when their current business model is, like, so screwed that, they're having to sell themselves. And, like, Paramount Plus just so doesn't work. It's like, maybe they actually just legitimately could not continue these shows. And, like, yes, it's bad for them. They are losing money and customers, but they're currently in a death spiral. Like, anything they could feasibly do is just going to make things worse. So it is kind of harder to tell if that's really the case or not, for Paramount specifically. The Amazing Digital Circus, that's amazing. That's one my wife is seeing, and I think I've seen the second episode in its entirety because my wife watches it and they watch a lot of the reviews, so I've seen bits of it, and I think I've seen all of the episodes just separately and out of order. But no, Has Been's the one my wife and Hell of a Boss, of course. Those are both good, although this is Prodigy, so I probably shouldn't be recommending adult animated cartoons. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, surely eventually, like, this would be really long term, but sort of the people who've watched, like, Rick and Morty or Has Been Hotel and stuff like that will become the people who are in charge. It's kind of like the deal when Doctor Who got canceled and then the fans eventually got old enough to, be writing shows, and then they brought it back because, like, yeah, of course they did. Doctor Who was similar. It got canceled because, like, the head of the BBC had very limited scope of what, like, proper television was. And so not just Doctor Who, but they canceled, like, a lot of programming that wasn't, like, a very basically what, like, the older generation would have really watched, and what you would have got, like, in the 60s. I know Doctor Who's from the 60s. But, and then as I understand it, things were pretty bad for the BBC. Because, it canceled a lot of that shows. All right, Touch of Grey. This is the crossover with Discovery, where we get Grey, who, honestly, I don't remember what happened to Grey. Just went to live on Trill. What a character. If Star Trek Prodigy ends, then we cannot get another show like this in the next 2 decades or so. It's so hard to talk about Paramount. Like, especially that since it's going to be bought by someone who I think they're saying Star Trek is one of the core brands, which, like, yeah, I mean, Star Trek is one of the core brands of, like, Paramount. But it sounds like they're not really in the mood to cancel Strange New Worlds or like the other projects. But also, like, Paramount's going into Star Trek movies. I guess because they're cheaper to produce. If one fails, then whatever. That was just one set. It's not like you built a whole show's set. But, like, Star Trek's never the best when it's moving. Like, what have we got right now? Section 31. Oof. We've got a Kelvin timeline prequel movie. Apparently, Star Trek 4 is still happening from the Kelvin timeline. And then a Picard movie that's, like, in talks. Why do we have four movies, three of them, like, totally separate? What does Kelvin prequel even mean? I mean, thank you, Paramount, for confirming that the Kelvin timeline wasn't created by Spock, but it always existed independent of the Prime timeline. But, like, it's... Paramount's just making weird decisions. But, like, are they making weird decisions because they're just incompetent? Or, like, they're in a death spiral? I don't know. Anyway, I think we'll do the countdown. We'll just do Touch of Grey. What is this episode even about? I don't know. About to do the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. You know, I see when we go into Netflix that it looks like the Kelvin timeline movies are on Netflix now and not Paramount. It's like, what's even happening with those? Why? I feel like every month the movies jump back and forth between Netflix and Paramount. In fact, why are we making Kelvin movies if they're not even on Paramount? Who knows? Like, the protostar, when it turns, it's kind of twitchy. It's very fast to move. It almost vibrates and, like, twitches. But Voyager, not only can you hear the, like, the deep engine, but it's so much slower and so much steadier, and it's brilliant at establishing scale and, like, weight. Why did Chakotay have that? And I really appreciate these scenes. There are some holes, but generally Star Trek does a great job of showing why Janeway lets these kids do all the things they do. Like, yeah, I think it's one of the best shows I've seen for, like, not making me go, well, why are the kids in charge? Why are you sending the kids on all these missions? Yeah, other countries have it rough. At least for Doctor Who, it's like basically everyone's got it on Disney. And then the classics are like a little more up in the air. But physical media, I'll always say, you know where Star Trek is? This season is on Netflix. Everything else is on my shelf and my hard drives. Physical media all the way. My wife, when we were making the muffins, they put on a movie on Disney Plus, and it had mid-roll ads for a movie. I'm like, what is this? What is this? I mean, it also has to be new, surely. Like, we didn't get ads for Doctor Who. I don't mind the ads if they're like before and after the show. You know, even before, it gives me a little time to get situated after you hit the play button. But yeah, mid-rolls. It's really interesting what the film industry did, where they basically left cable for a something that's more convenient for the consumers, but totally unsustainable. And now no consumer is ever going to go back to cable. Doctor Who's, yeah, I think Doctor Who, modern Doctor Who, is on Disney Plus, literally everywhere, except the UK, where it's on like iPlayer, and Northern Ireland, which is some sort of political blackmail to unify the Irelands. I don't know. They just get screwed over, apparently. Or, sorry, not Northern Ireland. Ireland proper. Mainland. Big Ireland? Republic of Ireland. That's the word. I do really like this guy's voice. Like, both as the diviner and just a normal dude. I hope he gets more work. Actually, hang on. I gotta check something. Cool. Oh, we got evil guards now. It's visually effective, but kind of funny. So let's talk about Solum now, right? Series 1 and Season 2 are a time loop. The events of Season 2 always happened in Season 1. It's a time loop. Meaning, and as we've established in this episode, Solum literally has to go to Civil War, or like none of this happens. If Solum doesn't go to Civil War, they don't attack Chakotay when the Protostar shows up. They don't send their 100 ships through the wormhole. The Diviner's never on Tars Lamor, which this episode confirms. Like, even if it never happened in Season 1, the end of Season 2 shows that happening. Which means, as I said before, Ithram becomes the Diviner. I can kind of get that. Your whole planet getting destroyed is like a big deal. Essentia still becomes Adult Essentia, which is weirder, because that means Adult Essentia should remember being overthrown. She should remember her younger self is not trustworthy. And all of these people, kind of internally, should be able to think, well, now that I know what happened, I can do better next time. Even though, their older selves also knew what happened last time. They thought the same thing. But the big thing is that Solum goes to war because the shock of first contact teaches them they're not alone in the universe. But now Solum apparently basically already had first contact with the Federation, but has like a significant amount of time to dwell on that. But apparently still, when the Federation actually has first contact with Solum, unless we are saying this was first contact, they still go into the Civil War. And their society still collapses, even though the Federation knows that's a possibility. Solum knows that's a possibility, and they should have had a lot of time to dwell on this. And, their rulers seem to be okay with aliens. The Adult Essentia is far more negative-minded than Azula in Avatar, The Last Airbender, and Claudia and the Dragon Prince. I spent too long since I've seen Avatar, if I'm being honest. I don't really mind that they become these sort of evil selves, but, how can Essentia fall for the same thing? Like, as her child self, Essentia saw her own downfall. How come she couldn't make preparations and prepare for that? Or, like, at the very least, keep a closer eye on her younger self. I do like we get kind of follow-ups from the Hollow Rights stuff, and he arguably even set up for what's about to happen with the Romulan attack and the synthetic ban. And it's just a good character moment, you know? Like, see, even the Protostar always goes forward a little bit faster than Voyager. It just to help show that weight and that size difference. I'm waiting for the line. That's why I'm silent. There it is. That one got a good laugh out of me the first time. It was just so unexpected. And like so old-fashioned even now, let alone the future. But God, so many problems in the Star Trek universe would be solved if you could know that the Universal Translator is active. If only Star Trek Prodigy won that Children's and Family Emmys for Outstanding Animated Series, the cancellation would never have happened. What do you mean? So Prodigy won loads of awards. Like, shortly after the cancellation, too. Like, Prodigy was the #1 in-demand streaming show for a good while. Like, we knew Prodigy was massive hit, not just for Star Trek, but, like, you don't just become the #1 in-demand streaming show for nothing. Let alone, you're capturing that child audience. You were creating the longevity of your brand. Like, it's... Was it just so Academy? Were you like, Academy's a kid's show? Well, like a teen show, and this is a kid's show? It's just baffling. Like, even if you were gonna cancel a show, right? You should have canceled Lower Decks. It just wasn't as successful or valuable to the brand as Prodigy. It was... Like, we don't have access to, you know, how profitable it was, how many people viewed it. But you don't become the #1 in-demand streaming show for nothing. And, like, it was a show you'd see everywhere. Kids were just rewatching and rewatching. Yeah. Let alone the fact it was almost done. Like, how do you actually write it off on your taxes? I'm confused on that. Like, you sold it. It wasn't a loss. You sold it. Let's just not talk about why you weren't a Starfleet officer. It is kind of funny that they treat Wesley like he was a really good Starfleet officer, which he was until he actually became an officer and like went to the academy. Then he was part of like the biggest scandal the academy has ever had. And then he like on his first proper mission fundamentally disagreed with like the ethics just and rebelled and like caused the mission to be a failure, if I recall. We're living in a universe where more than 10 seasons of Miraculous Ladybug and Paw Patrol are more important to the animation audience than a gem like Prodigy. Now, to be fair, Star Trek, Paw Patrol is not only very successful, but rakes in a lot of money from merch. So, again, Paramount has never really seemed to know what to do with like merchandising Star Trek. But my wife won't let me diss Miraculous Ladybug. Actually, they also say it's bad. I don't know what I'm talking about, but they watch it. But again, do you know what those shows do? They make merchandise and rake in profit. Like, Star Trek is just really bad. It like Paramount and Plus seems just really bad. Merchandising. Like, have you actually seen any Star Trek Prodigy merch? I have seen the game, which apparently isn't very good, and like some action figures and a Murph plush. That's it. Where's like Prodigy backpack, Prodigy lunchbox, Prodigy like whatever, loads more toys. Like, Eagle Moss went under, but even then we hadn't gotten a protostar for like ages in season 1. And Star Trek should be a pretty easily merchandisable show. You don't. Well, there were no starships within like a 30-minute radius. I guess there's no backup ever coming. Even though the Federation, I guess, has ships with a slipstream drive. And like, remember when that shuttle went from Solum back to the Voyager A, which is like was 90 light years from Earth, and they didn't even bring up the time because it was pointless. But now apparently the nearest starship to Solum is days away. So like I guess there aren't any Federation starships in the Federation. Like that's Prodigy's consistent weak point is just the time. You know, like the travel time, and it's made the universe so small. Like, other parts of modern Star Trek have that too, but Prodigy is the worst offender. Okay. I hate this bug in Chrome that's been around for, like, years, where you'll get the, like, blinky text thing for literally, like, anything. And that's why I keep minimizing the video and bringing it up again, is because I want to get rid of that. animation and like more generally shows are not about merchandising stuff, right? That's true. However, especially with how much shows cost nowadays, that's how you make your money. Especially in kids animation, like, you know, think about the stuff from the 80s, like Transformers or whatever, all the shows that are literally designed just to sell toys. Like, that is how you make money nowadays. But like, also, it's not mutually exclusive. You can have like this season of Prodigy, but also merchandise it. And if we did that, you could make more Prodigy. Like, you know, you can make fun of Star Wars for having like so many different stormtroopers to sell the toys, but Prodigy didn't even sell the toys of the uniforms they have. And like, if they had, maybe Paramount wouldn't be in massive debt, you know? It's just, it's very weird. And again, if we look at Doctor Who as an example, you know, ratings are really good for like a show nowadays, but like, you know, not the heights as they were before, but it doesn't matter. And like what you'll hear all the showrunners say, because Doctor Who fans like to really freak out about ratings, is be like, look, it doesn't matter. What matters is how much money it rakes in. And Doctor Who rakes in its money from merchandising. And Doctor Who's doing fine. Like, Doctor Who basically bankrolls the BBC, you know, like. I do feel like this rebellion is a little easy, especially when we haven't learned about the Valnakot basically at all. We could probably set up a society where, you know, you could make that more feasible. But could you imagine if, like, someone came on... The present existence of alien life was such a major deal, the planet literally goes to civil war and destroys itself. But, like, some guy goes on a transmission and is like, hey, actually, Essentia is bad and the aliens are good. And they're like, yeah, you know what? That is true. We do have guards in the street. Do you think he came up with the title for the Doctor Who spinoff? The War Between the Land and the Sea? This title's so shockingly bad, they should be embarrassed that they announced it, even if it's a placeholder? There's Admiral never violated the Prime Directive Janeway we know and love. Especially when you consider, if Solom doesn't go to civil war, the universe collapses. Look at that. Like, okay, it is funny that the protostar always moves faster, because that would imply it has to stop or back up, but it does do a great job of establishing scale. Oh, wow, that was done. So half of these have surprised me, where I'm like, oh, and I literally have the time bar at the bottom of the screen at all times. Whoop. Aurora Boreas. At this time of day, in this time of year, in this part of the country, localized entirely within this live stream. Ouroboros, oh my god, I could say this, but now I have Aurora Borealis in my head. Ouroboros, there's the word. The creature what eats its own tail. Is a title I wish this episode didn't have, because when I was making all the thumbnails, I saw the ending was called Ouroboros. I'm like, oh, it's a time loop. You know, it's... but anyway... Yeah, we'll finally get to answer all the questions. We'll get to really analyze proper, like, how solid is the time loop? I just realized I forgot to continue drawing my dumb timeline in Paint. That was dumb. But yeah, it's a good finale from what I remember. It's just Solem in the Civil War is the weak point. I almost feel like the writers wrote Solem having a civil war. They knew they were going to do the time loop thing. They thought out a lot of it, all that they needed to know they could commit to it in season 1. But then after making season 1, they kind of realized that Solem has to go to civil war or the universe collapses, and then tried to brush that under the rug. Be like, don't think about that one too much. Like, you saved the day, but don't think about the fact that Gwen's planet is doomed or the timeline doesn't work. Or if the planet isn't doomed, that the time loop is broken. They address it. I mean, there's a line we'll get to, but that's... It's not a weak part of the time loop. Essentia is the weak part of the time loop, but in terms of getting that, like, victory and preventing the Civil War, like, a core part of Gwen's kind of arc and character this season, it's a goal she inherently can't do, which you can still make a story of. I probably wouldn't do, hey kid, it turns out you literally can't make the world better and your planet is doomed to fail. That isn't the message I would put in Star Trek Prodigy. That's not the message I would put, but you could tell an interesting story. But yeah, I think we will try and save a lot of this talk for the end of Prodigy. But again, I'm not going to do a break. I'm just going to go straight in. We are going to do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go countdown. And on go, we're all going to hit play. Same as before. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Oh, what? You can see my mouse now in OBS. So normally, I hide the mouse, like, here, behind the character. Spoilers, but in TOS, that's why I put the mouse for Spock, is behind his arm. But if I do that, wait for it, the time bar goes away. Or I have to deal with the big dumb preview, so mouse goes over there. Oh man, I could have had that whole chat about the Civil War during the intro. Boom, 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 boom. I really like that planet, right, with all the rings, because it looks like someone's eye. And I always think that's a great shot of, like, an eye or a planet that's someone's eye. And when you zoom out and see the character, you can realize it was an eye. And then I always remember they never do that. They just cut to 0. It's like, what was that? It's the, like, Jupiter-like planet. I'll try and remember to point it out next time. But, like, why? That was such a good eye. That had to have been an eye originally, surely. Going back to the topic of merchandising, you mentioned Bluey, which you love, but Bluey also merchandises the hell out of, like, those dogs. You get Bluey backpacks, Bluey shirts, Bluey all that stuff. It's like, that's just how you make money, and, like, as long as you don't ram money-making stuff into the show, it's fine. You know what could have been fun? If this was the Civil War, like, this rebellion started it. I mean, I guess you'd have the problem again where Essentia should know what's happening, but I think that I don't know. I just wish it was better established, or, like, better addressed. Maybe season 3 would have done something with it. And like you could even enhance some of what Essentia does, where like when she kind of goes crazy at the end, even against all odds, that she's seeing history repeat itself. And so she's like basically losing her mind that she's gonna lose again, and so she threatens like the whole planet's and the whole universe's stability just to get back at the Federation. Which is just 5 of them, apparently. Yep, 6 wormholes. Yeah, they make the merchandising separately, but I'm like, it's just amazing that there's basically no merch for Star Trek, such a visually distinct show, especially the one aimed at kids. Like, if they just sold action figures of the cast and like some of the guards, whatever, like maybe they would have had the money to not cancel the show. That's just how you make money now, is you merchandise your stuff. Oh, there's more than 6 wormholes now. I don't know, it did magically unrust itself a few episodes ago. Gwen tells Rok that she loves her, but Gwen and Dal, no. You know, it kind of defeats the purpose, but I have just realized you should put a transporter in the shuttle bay, because then you could do things like beam the shuttle down to the planet and fly it up there. I feel like there's a use case, you know? Hey, should we put any of our science staff on this project? No, 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 no. But the Tribble. Somewhere in there, I swear they wrote the range of minus infinity to plus infinity. I don't know if you needed to write that one down, being honest. You could probably remember that one. Earth looks so good in this, like the Academy. Yeah, Prodigy was one of your inspirations for like animation storytelling. That's why it might not surprise me to get some sort of follow-up to these characters way down the line. But season 3 would surprise me. Pleasantly surprise me, but it still surprise me. But who knows, maybe like Skydance comes in and is like, no, we need to get this stuff back, and they like recommission all of their Star Treks. Who knows? Honestly, I think what Paramount, I mean, you know, not being an expert, but what Paramount needs is just go, screw Paramount Plus, let's go back to making shows and just selling them. Like, could you really not, is that date not going to be in the logs or something? Well, I guess you don't have that protostar anymore, fair enough. You know, thinking about it, the Diviner really wanted to keep Gwen away from the slaves he had, right? I don't remember if it was Del specifically. But if the Diviner does remember these events, then he probably would try and keep Gwen away from the slaves, because he knows that one day Gwen will escape with some of them and then prevent everything, you know? I mean, maybe you think he'd just execute Del, but... Yeah, I could kind of picture, actually, the Kazon trying to sell, like, Del and Rok-Tahk and stuff, and he's like, no, not that one. You get that one as far away from me as possible. It was a Prometheus that did First Contact, that's right. Yeah, see, it's very much supposed to be a time loop. Like, Season 2 always happened. Yeah, there we go. Are you telling me the Civil War isn't big? Like, that's option 3, is that the Civil War isn't actually a big event. But it does seem to be, like, literally the most important event in the entire series. Like, literally everything comes back to Solum and, like, the people who live on it. And so that's the part that I don't really get as much. So Prodigy has been free of it now. I thought being animated they wouldn't have to deal with this like the live actions. But some of those wormholes were definitely on the edge and didn't share the common thread. So that's an example of the VFX not matching the dialogue, which has been a weirdly consistent thing in like Discovery and Strange New Worlds recently. Nitpick. I want to be clear. Nitpick there, but yeah. Why would you want to use a touchscreen that's sharp? They're hardcore on Solum. I do wish these heirlooms got explained a little bit, but I just would have liked more Solum, like a better understanding of this culture. And that's the part where, like, yes, this series is packed, and, well, the first 10 episodes did each contribute to the story. I feel like you might have been able to rework things a bit, so that you could make room early on to fit stuff like that. For example, Zero only needs a body so he can solve the problem later on. And you don't necessarily want to destroy that arc about Zoro getting senses. But, like, why could you just make his original new suit have sense, you know, and just clear up all that space? Or could you maybe cut out, trim or condense some parts of that arc? Like, not necessarily dedicate a whole episode to Zoro losing his body? Maybe it could have gotten damaged some other way, and so you could basically create an episode there. Is that the Portal 2 buzzer? It's probably a stock sound, but so what? Did you know people with guilty conscience? Or no, not that one. What is it? I can't remember where they use that beat, but I swear they do. Prodigy does have a really good sense of scale without just feel like they're playing with their new toys of those like virtual rooms or whatever they're called that I always forget the name of. And I mean, probably part of that is that it's animation. It's literally not using the like virtual rooms. The Mandalorian rooms, whatever they're called, the green screen replacements. And like dynamically it does a lot of good stuff with motion, again because it's animated really helps. I guess the compliment is that this whole thing is very well directed. There was a weird voice for the robot. That's not Dreadnought. Did they just fall down that whole tower? Okay. Okay, here's the line. So yeah, there's the line that implies that Solum always does go to war. That's the line that fixes my complaint, or at least is trying to serve the goal of, no, Solum does still go to war, and they're whatever. They can't prevent that. Because of course, it literally has to. If there's a world where Solum didn't go to war, the timeline died. It doesn't exist. And that also helps, like, why does young Essentia become old Essentia and, like, do all this? Because she has, maybe gone crazy by, the knowledge that her planet will literally always collapse in civil war. It just does really undercut the sort of heroic victory they face at the end. And, like, Gwen doesn't seem to react to this at all. If she believes Essentia, she doesn't seem to care. It's like, yay, I saved the day, but, only for a little bit. Oh, come on, let me see that wormhole destroy the ship. There we go. I have just remembered they are at the top of this massive tower, though. And that all... Oh, no, they fell down. That's right. Complaint retracted. I would have liked this setup, too, more about their people. Because I get why Ithram can do that. Like, Gwen inherited the heirloom. But everyone else is also like, yeah, we can just do this. I do love the design of the Vaunakot, though. Like, a lot of this, I think some of the buildings are a little plain so that they could be animated easier. But generally, this is a very good realization of a culture and a planet. Especially when you consider, it's something like Bajor that we're going to be spending a lot of time with. And you'd really want that. You'd want it to feel real. The big wormhole. Oh, I guess there is a little hint of romance there. Or maybe, actually, the whole thing about Chakotay and Janeway's relationship, even though there are definitely bits where it feels romantic, is that it's absolutely not. And it's something above romance. It's something big about the captain and first officer. Maybe that's what they're doing with Gwen and Dal, is that they're not a romantic couple, they're a captain and first officer, which is some deep spiritual bond that, like, we could never understand. But who knows? And yep, that's gonna be the end of part 1. Well, might as well just go straight into part 2. Back. Glowing eyes of Gwell just make you look beautiful. Yeah, it's a good look. Um, the I like that they didn't lean too much into like some sort of all-powerful god being kind of aesthetic, which, you know, can often feel kind of cheap. I mean, they sort of did. You know, that like I think it would have been better if it was kind of established that that was a thing they could do, because otherwise it does feel a bit Deus Ex Machina. But you know, we're talking about pretty lower level nitpicks at that, not even complaints. God, it's almost 20 minutes. What do they have to do? Is it literally just epilogue? Hang on, what? They've got 20 minutes. I guess this is what people always say they wanted out of Voyager. Of like, give us some time where they're home and we get to see that. But I'm like, you have 20 minutes of plotlet? You gotta... Oh, I guess they have to fight the loom. We literally just set that up. No, fair enough, fair enough. So yeah, I will get straight into the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then on go, we all hit play. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And of course, I will talk about Prodigy more generally at the end of this. Oh, I gotta point out the planet that's an eye, right? So keep an eye out on it. It's early on. It's the one with rings. It'll appear kind of here and in the bottom right. I mean, it's huge. You'll notice it. Okay. It's the one before. It's the shot before 0, so I think it's like one of the first ones. There's an eye. There, this one. Look at that. That's like a pupil with a big eye. It's a big connected ring. It's like, that should have been the other way around, where you have this thing and you zoom out and you realize it's someone's eye. And it bugs me. It bugs me. Looms are just an interesting concept for a time paradox. Oh yeah, they definitely watched Doctor Who's Father's Day, and it stuck with them. Don't get me wrong. You know, I'm not judging them. But it's one of those many little things where I'm like, there's no way some head writer of this was not a Doctor Who fan. They even call them the Scavengers in, like, their first appearance, which is what the equivalent is called in Doctor Who. The only difference is that they look different, like, totally, but... I wonder if there are times where it's like, the Scavengers probably should have shown up, though. Oh god, I've become the Doctor Who fan I hate. It's like, where are the Scavengers in this scene? But I can't really think of one where, like, they've properly broken time like this. I see Vaunakot also used the air raid siren that the UK did. It would have been fun if we could somehow tie this back to that one loom they sent free. That, like, they went back, found the other loom, and came back. Janeway better not pilot the ship. Good old Janeway. Nope, she was eavesdropping. I was gonna say she just knows, but nope, she eavesdrops. Confirmed. I suppose the loom attack probably would help sort of anti-alien sentiment on Solum that could help lead to the Civil War. Like, again, I don't mind that Solum really goes to Civil War, and in everyone but Essensia's case, I don't really mind that they do what they do. I don't even conceptually mind that Essensia still does what they do. I just would have liked it maybe more clear or a better acknowledgement of how these characters... Maybe it's in Season 1, you know? If I were to go back, but some of Essensia's actions in particular just feel a bit odd. I think part of the way the scale is so good is they don't just have the ships go forward, they have them turn and bank. And that's just helping so much with the mass and the weight of... They feel like proper things more than, like, I think any other ship. Oh yeah, here's this line. I really hate this line. Like, for one, you clearly were talking about that. The context he said this line in was like freaking out that there was no timeline they could solve this specific issue until they added Maj'el. And later he freaks out that they separated because they couldn't, because he's like, why did you separate? You need to be together to solve this specific problem we're facing. And it's such like, it almost makes them feel like super important beings that like have to exist for the universe, but... And it does kind of feel weird, especially without seeing it, that I guess this whole crew sticks together for their entire careers. I would have much rather just left it open. It's like, yeah, I can imagine that they go on and have successful careers in Starfleet without being told that. Also, the fact that Wesley would just say it when previously he's been kind of like, yeah, don't look at your future, and like he's avoided saying things. This is a beautiful shot, though. If you're gonna make the view screen a window, Prodigy really knows how to do it right. Although now that I think about it, I wonder how the hell, not Eagle Moss, but Fan Home is gonna do a Protostar. Like, if they could actually pull off a Protostar with the interior, that would be fantastic. But I do think this does help with Hollow Janeway's acceptance of the kids in Season 1. Like, could you use Janeway if you're Netflix and you've bought Season 3? I don't know. Do you have the rights to Janeway? Hollow Janeway, I guess, is technically a Prodigy character, which they own. But Admiral Janeway wouldn't, unless Paramount's gonna be nice. But then you have the case where, like, two independent companies are making Star Trek, and they could write contradictions, which Paramount definitely doesn't want. I don't know if Netflix cares. You know, I guess technically you could take that, because according to those temporal echoes, they think time's fixed. That's a small detail. I do want to go back and watch season 1. I probably won't do it on stream. Like, we'll just get through TOS, but I'd love to know if there really are. Has anyone done that? Has anyone gone back and watched season 1 or watched beforehand? There's a lot of cool details knowing where this goes. Oh yeah, I forgot the scene where they taught kids that if you're feeling sad, eat ice cream. Well, they don't want you to forget about the romance scene. Yeah, the Series 2 finale is looking like a series finale. Discovery had a bit of that feeling, too, Season 5. They are kind of lucking themselves into finale story. Well, it's just, provided you end the episode right here and don't let it play any further, it is a really good finale, a very contained story that just kind of, you know, it's a small story that tells what it wants, provided you end the episode in about 30 seconds. Like, I guess it does kind of set up, and then they went off to do adventures, but the whole tying into the Romulan, the attack on Mars and all that is like, no, this was a story that was gonna continue. But it is so good that this story season 1 setup got to be told and this got to be finished. Like, if we end it here, it's just gonna be another Enterprise. It's like season 4 was great, and like they could have told so much good stuff with the Romulan War, but we still got a lot of great stuff that, other than some small references, is finished, self-contained, you know? And that's basically where Prodigy is. Like, other than, you know, the last 10 minutes, it's like, yeah, you know, they finished. So were the people who were erased from times brought back to life? Otherwise, in the loop, Voyager would eventually run out of crew as people get killed off. Well, small details, I guess. Like, look at that ship. Huge. Love it. Is that a Voyager quote? Probably not. The Picard uniform back there. DI. Should that mean something? Daystrom Institute. Ah, thank you. Thank you, me. Oh, yeah. No, there were less moments between Del and Gwen, just generically, because this season had a lot going on, and that probably would have stuffed it. But, I mean, you do have a few really small moments. Oh, what was that reward on her desk? I want to see that. Hang on. 14 minutes. We're gonna go back and check. In fact, I'm just gonna... I also do love that the exact scene they were like, why the hell did Picard not do this? It's like, oh, well, now I know. Poor Picard writers just being like, why didn't you get Wesley? You didn't let him meet his brother. It's like, I can't tell you why. Because they cancel, and then like even they canceled the show. It's like, ugh. It is a nice farm, but I would kind of like a captain who doesn't just go live on a farm. Like, imagine how, I mean, Picard had his vineyard, but imagine how fun someone like Picard would have just, like, in a museum, you know, being a curator. But Zero and Maj'el have more of like a romantic plot than Del and Gwen, though. It's just interesting to have been omitted. Like, I'm not complaining. I'd just love to know more about why. God, I hate those spiders. Sorry. I sure hope nothing bad happens today. There we go, and if you end the episode right here, such a beautiful, self-contained story. She was, wasn't she? Am I wrong? Wasn't Janeway in science? Yeah, and the bye everyone, such a lovely self-contained. No, I really do like how we tied into it was set up so well. Even taking the shots from Children of Mars. Like I do, and it really helps when you get sort of these, we'll just say, like, you know, generically, some of these bad things, or these things that felt mishandled, or like they are a detriment to the war. Like, you know, Picard made the Federation kind of a utopia. When you get these tie-ins and these things like this, and you let better, I'm being harsh and direct here, but like better shows tie into that and make stories with it, it actually really helps bring them up. And I just love the connective tissue it has. And let me say, I don't want to just call, like, this generically bad and Prodigy... Well, I'll call Prodigy better. But, I'm kind of rushing because it's a watch-along. The Mars synth attack was more like a Star Trek depiction of how Americans felt during 9/11. No, that was Enterprise Season 3. This is how Americans, and speaking as an American, a lot of the rest of the world kind of sees the state of the world now. Especially children, where, like, this stuff is happening sort of above them, that they don't have any stake in. And there's sort of a common sort of belief, or sort of the doomerism of, like, yeah, well, the world's just gonna end and everything sucks, screw it. That I think Prodigy is working to, first off, put the Federation in a world like that, and then help show how to combat that and be like, no, you can still be hopeful. The world isn't actually doomed. While also highlighting the problems with the doomerism, and then the actual problems that with the world that we currently live in. I can't even remember. Do they get a protostar? I don't remember the ship that she gives them. I think it's a protostar. Oh, yeah, it is. God, look. Chakotay, Janeway, and the Doctor. She's still so good to see. It does look good. Oh, it does look good. Oh my god, it's the USS Prodigy. I never noticed. I love that it's called the Prodigy, actually. Where's Murph gonna wear the pip? The Doctor crying. That's fun. I do find it weird, though, that they keep talking about the Federation borders receding. I'm like, why is it receding? It's been like 5 minutes. Did we just, like, cut off a bunch of planets? Be like, screw it. We don't need that sector. Like, who'd they give the territory to? I don't know. I do think this resolution also helps justify the presence of a training program in the first place. Like, if this was, or something like this was close to the original goal of the Protostar, it makes sense that Janeway could make it happen, and it justifies a training program being on the Protostar, even though it's crewed by, like, Chakotay and a bunch of senior officers. What's that? That clip Del saw was out of context? Del, that's the captain's chair. It is kind of funny that he glances at Chakotay is like the others before me, when Chakotay is currently a captain. I'm sure Janeway was a first officer at some point, but, you know, it is a nice sentiment, don't get me wrong. These aren't complaints, these are jokes. Although not as big a fan of the uniforms, to be honest. They feel a little... They've got the Starfleet colors, but they're... Oh, he put a uniform on. They are a little generic-y military flight uniform. Which I guess, if it were the darker era of Starfleet, it would be a little militaristic, but... I love the Prodigy, rather. Oh, it doesn't have a deflector dish. No, it's wrong. Get out of here. Ew. Never mind. That was weird. It didn't have a deflector dish. And there's a nebula for a future thumbnail. Before we get bogged down, 14 minutes. What award did Janeway have? It was like a split second. Not Janeway. Medical Away Team. The USS Enterprise Medical Away Team. Honorary Citizens of Core Corolla 5. Star Trek. Core. That was just so clearly text. That they cut away from instantly. I'm like, that's gotta be something. Ah, here it is. It's got a picture. Core Corolla 5. Contains spoilers for Prodigy. The outbreak of the Fyrox play. A medical away team from the Enterprise D, including Crusher, successfully eliminated the plague. Starfleet Command would subsequently consider the incident classified. Yeah, TNG Alliance. I think it's just alluded to. Yeah, it's something. Uh, I don't have a good way of showing this. It's from the episode Allegiance, season 3, episode 18, and it's something Picard uses. You know when they're all trapped in the room, and there's like a duplicate Picard on the Enterprise, and like, you Google it. I think it's a mission he references as being classified, but there you go. That's a deep cut reference. Although we didn't get much between Del and Gwen, but Del giving up the captain post Gwen was great enough. No, yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't feel like it was missing. I feel like it was probably a good decision to not have it. I'd love to know more about the reasoning, or like what they were planning on going for, what they do. I'm really looking forward to kind of the age where, like classic Star Trek, you can just kind of look up and find the behind the scenes for like anything. We can actually get a lot of these details, or a lot of the like people from go to conventions and write it on Memory Alpha. And especially because a lot of them were canceled, it's like, well, you don't really want to say your plans because like you might get to be able to do them. I mean, Discovery knew. They're like, nah, no, we're done. We were going to do something with Calypso. But it is a fantastic season. Easily the strongest season of modern Trek. I mean, as a whole, season 1 and 2, it's probably the best season in terms of just like where its sort of consistent average is. I mean, Lower Decks is also great, but I think there is something impressive, whereas Lower Decks is just a series of episodic adventures with great character work. Prodigy is a very serialized story across 2 seasons, specifically season 2, that also does incredibly complex time travel logic. Does it sound? I don't think there's a single paradox or problem in the time travel. Just some complaints about like, why isn't Essentia better at like preventing her past self when she should know what happens, or things like that. But like logically, it's sound. Screw that, people who say you can't write a logically sound, time travel story. But above that, because it is a kid's show that could potentially be going to like very young audiences who have never experienced anything like this, never thought of time travel in any way. Especially because that I mean, there's also plenty of adults, don't get me wrong, that'll do that. It's managing to go over its very complicated like timeline and specifics multiple times at different levels of like complexity and like how well someone will understand it, and also not feel like we're repeating ourselves or getting boring. Like, I can't stress enough how amazing that Wesley won. Also, Animation, thank you for joining me. It's great having someone in the chat. It is 3 a.m. Go to bed. It is nice. It was really great having someone here. So I'm very glad you could make it. But to finish my thought, the first time Wesley shows up, what episode is that? The Devourer of All Things, where they Wesley is finally sitting down going, this is what has happened specifically. Here are the scavengers. This is what they're doing. This is the temple. This is who I am. It's a lot to explain. And there's the bit where like everyone but Gwen gets frozen so he can explain it all. But then he has to explain it all to the other crew after they get unfrozen. And then he has to explain it all like a third time for someone else. And that's done at the varying levels. So like, no matter how much detail you want, or how much you need to kind of simplify things for you to get it, or whatever, it speaks to every level, and it doesn't manage to feel boring. Like, this is the 3rd or 4th time I'm hearing this one thing, and it's astounding. I would be genuinely surprised if anyone left this series, not understanding what happened. Law of numbers, there's probably one person who's like, I don't really get this one thing. But, like, beyond that, you have to have just gotten it, surely. Like, maybe you can't perfectly write out the entire timeline. And it's complicated. Like, even I had some bits where I had to sit down, like, wait, isn't the badge like infinitely old? Or isn't the ship infinitely old because it's in a time loop? But no, like the ship from season 1 is the oldest version of the ship. It gets destroyed, then we spend time with a younger version. Like the ship itself isn't in a loop. There is no physical object that's in a loop. The only object or like thing that is in a loop, other than time itself, is the recording of Chakotay and Adreek sending the protostar off into the wormhole, because that never happened. What actually happened was Chakotay managed to get Adreek onto the ship and they took off. But the clip we see in season 1 in the early part of this season, before they change time, that doesn't happen. So, I mean, they don't actually show this, but you can imply that they just downloaded that clip to the protostar. And so that then it's on there exactly as they left it. And that's why they have access to it in the future. But that's data. Like, they just downloaded the data from the isolinear chip they have, which is not in a loop, because it didn't go back in time. And they just put the data on the computer. Technically, you could get kind of nitpicky of like, well, if those events never happened, how did the data exist in the first place? But that's not a plot hole. There's actually a name for this type of paradox. It's an object that basically never existed. Like, the answer is the very first time the data came from the future when they downloaded it onto the protostar. And that data came from the protostar they got from the past. Like, it's a loop. There is no beginning. There's a name for these objects. I don't remember what. And usually I kind of complain. Like Kirk, in the movies, he's given a pair of glasses for his birthday in the Wrath of Khan or something. And then in the voyage home, like a pair of antique glasses. In the voyage home, when they go back in time, he sells them to an antique dealer. And there's even a joke where Spock is like, McCoy gave those to you for your birthday. And Kirk's like, and he will give them to me again. The thing being that McCoy bought the glasses that Kirk sold because they stayed in that antique shop for centuries. But then you get in the problem like, so are those glasses infinitely old? Like, they will rust. You know, you'd have to clean those glasses, repair them, and it probably wouldn't be literally exactly the same in every loop. But here, it's data. Like, it's fine. It's going to be exactly the same. It's software that you transferred. It's not hardware, so it's actually identical. You even did that paradox, like, with literally no complaints. So yeah, and if you want to say that kind of paradox is possible in your fictional world, be my guest. I mean, I can't tell you it's not. You didn't even create, like, or destroy matter to make it work. It's data. Like, it's ones and zeros on a hard drive. But yeah, fantastic season. It really is. Next week, we will be continuing our TOS watch-along. I believe it's Tomorrow is Yesterday. I think it's the one they go back in time to, like, a military base. It's actually, well, it depends on how you split the calendar. But this Saturday, we'll be doing that. On the day after, on Sunday, the 11th, Pacific Standard Time, noon, we should be able to do Doctor Who with my brother. And then, other than, like, the occasional weekend where I'm busy, there's gonna be no interruptions. We'll just be able to finish that. And that'll take us, the first season of TOS, as I said, will take us basically to Lower Decks. We'll start season 2 a little bit. And Doctor Who will also take us to Lower Decks. And then we'll just do season 3 of Doctor Who. We're rewatching Star Trek unless there's new stuff. We're rewatching Doctor Who unless there's new stuff. So it's Christmas, is when we stop doing that. I don't know, by the way, if we're doing the spin-off, The War Between the Land and the Sea. They're not even filming that, so that's probably like a year or two out. I'll see. It depends on if Caden does it, I think. I'll watch it. I just don't know if I'll stream it. But yeah, I will say, with that, thank you all very much for watching. And I'll see you next